Welcome back to Fallout, where today we're going to have another discussion on one of the perks in the Fallout games. This is the Tag perk, and we're going to talk about whether or not this one is a really bad perk or kind of an overhated perk. So this is going to be similar to the jury rigging video that I just did the other day, which was a lot of fun to make, and thank you for all the comments on there. It was really interesting to get your guys' perspective on it. We're going to the opposite end of the spectrum with Tag, though, where jury rigging is generally considered one of the best perks in the game. Tag is usually considered one of the worst perks in the game. So first up, let's go over what Tag does. And we're primarily going to be talking about Tag in Fallout 3 and Fallout New Vegas. Not so much in the older games, although I will mention it here in a little bit, and it doesn't really appear in the later games like Fallout 4. So Tagged is a level 16 perk in both Fallout 3 and Fallout New Vegas, and this perk actually doesn't have any requirements to it whatsoever. You can only get this one once, and what this one allows you to do is tag a fourth skill. So in both Fallout 3 and Fallout New Vegas, you're allowed to pick 3 skills towards the very start of the game that you're going to specialize in. This gives you plus 15 points to any one of those. So you can't pick one of those again to tag, but you can pick a fourth skill that you didn't tag. So for the requirements, this is pretty straightforward. Being level 16, I mean, you're going to get there unless you're doing like a speed run or you're trying to do a specific challenge, in which case then I guess you wouldn't. And having no requirements is good because that means any build can take tagged. As well as plus 15 points to a particular skill could be argued as a bonus because that's pretty much the same as if you were going to level up. This does heavily depend on your intelligence and other perks that you've taken, but 15 points in Fallout 3 and Fallout New Vegas is still a pretty substantial amount per level. The most you can get in Fallout 3 I think is like 23, and I don't remember exactly how many you can get in Fallout New Vegas. It might be the same to where you could get up to 23 per level, so it's not going to be at the very high end of that, but that is specializing in high amounts of intelligence, as well as having particular perks. Now that I think about it, I'm pretty sure New Vegas is actually 18 at the highest, so 15 is fairly substantial in that game. Now let's talk about why this one could be good. Let's play devil's advocate for this one first, and then we'll talk about why it may not be good. 15 points to any particular skill is pretty nice. That is a pretty substantial boost, and if you've already put all of your skill points into that skill beforehand and then tag it, then you're just going to be bumping up by basically 2 levels, where if you have a perk at, let's say, like 30, then you put 15 points into it and you tag this one, it suddenly goes up to 60, which is a pretty big increase. That could be increased even further by various temporary buffs, either due to armor, magazines, other skills that might be buffing it up, whatever it might be, or other conditions that are buffing it up. So you could max out a skill a lot faster thanks to tagged. And I actually had an instance of this when I did a challenge run on Fallout New Vegas where I was trying to complete the game by getting to 100 in every single skill with having 1 intelligence. And you can do this. I had to kind of cheat this out, and tag was one of the ways that I didn't really cheat it out, but I did need it for that build so that I could actually max out all of my stats. On top of that, I cheated out like 15 points to every skill thanks to the skilled glitch. So that's kind of cool, or the skilled bug, whatever you want to call it, where you can take skilled at the very start of the game, leave good springs, get skilled again, go up to 10 points to everything, and then go to Old World Blues and pick it again, and then you go up to 15 in everything. So essentially I tagged all of my skills from that, plus the 3 that I initially tagged, and then the 4th skill. That was on a very specific build though. That was a character that was at 1 intelligence, so they were getting the absolute minimum amount of skill points that you absolutely could. So the early levels, and even up to the late levels, were rather painful because normally I would be able to max out my skills a little bit faster than that, especially the skills that I really wanted to use. I also really had to go out of my way in that run to collect every single skill book in the game so that I could actually get my skills up to a decent level. And because my intelligence was so low, it also locked me out of certain perks that I could have gotten to make things a little bit easier, like educated and comprehension. So in that case, tagged was actually pretty good because I just didn't meet the requirements for so many other options. Now that's kind of where the good parts of tagged end. There's not really much else to it. It's a very simple perk. Now for the negatives of tagged, there are quite a few of them. One of them is if you even plan on going with average intelligence to above average intelligence, you're going to be able to get 100 in every skill anyway, so tagged is unnecessary at that point. Yes, you will be able to boost up one of your skills faster, and if you don't plan on going to max level, that could be an option. But if you do plan on playing through the game and you do plan on doing a lot and at least getting to the maximum level, then tagged is unnecessary. You're just going to get it there anyway. Another problem with tagged is that I have mentioned some other skills that are kind of better than this, or some other perks that are better than this, namely something like educated. educated you can get at level 4. It does require some intelligence to get, but this one gives you either +2 or +3 more skill points every time that you level up. Meaning that in Fallout 3, within just 5 levels, you're going to have the same equivalent points to tagged, and you don't really have to do anything extra, especially since that's a low-level perk. You could get this before you would even get up to the level 16 requirement. So in that way, that one would be better. Comprehension is another one because comprehension makes it so, at least in Fallout 3, you get 2 times the amount of skill points every time that you read a book. And there's about 25 books in total in Fallout 3, not counting 2 that can infinitely spawn, in which case then, whether you have it or not, you can max out those 2 skills. So in that regard, you would go from having +25 to all of your skills up to +50 with all of your skills, which is a very big increase and way more useful than tagged. It's also another low-leveled perk, so you could get it a lot sooner. In New Vegas, it's arguably even better because it counts for magazines, which count for temporary buffs. So rather than having a +10 temporary buff to any of your skills, you could get all the way up to a +20, which is generally enough to pass most skill checks if you need that, meaning that even the extra bonus from tagged isn't that great. Another problem with tagged is that you do have to tag a 4th skill. You already have 3 skills at the start that you picked right away just so that you could specialize in. Generally, assuming this isn't your first run in the Fallout games, you're probably going to pick 3 skills that you know are useful and you plan on using pretty often. This is likely going to be one of your combat skills, and then either 1 or 2 quality of life skills. You might go for double combat skills, just depends on what build you're running and why you're running it. So you're going to have to pick one of your skills that you found wasn't as necessary, although you could argue that there is quite a bit more than just 3 skills that are very useful throughout the game on really any build. Even if you're going with like a fully pacifist build, you could tag something like barter speech and then like science or lockpicking. And then maybe you could argue that you want either science or lockpicking as your final tag skill because you just don't have it. And if you're going to the pacifist run, then combat skills aren't really necessary either because you can just skip them and go for anything like tagged. So in that case, it could also be useful. I should also mention that tagged was a whole lot better in the older games of Fallout as well. In Fallout 1, 2, and I believe it was in Tactics as well. And this one gave you 15% of whatever your total level was to that skill. And for those of you who have never played the original Fallout games, your skills could actually go above 100. So you could go all the way up to 300%, I believe, with any skill. And that did actually make a difference because tag wouldn't really be that great if you picked a skill that was still very low. If it was something like 20-30% or something like that, grabbing tagged isn't really going to help it that much. But if you grab a skill that's at like 200% and you get another 15% on that, it's going to be really good because you're just going to get a lot more value from it. So in that regard, it is actually a pretty good skill in the older games. Just in Fallout 3 and Fallout New Vegas, I think it's actually one of the weakest skills in the game. So in conclusion, is tag an overhated skill? Personally, I would say no. It can be useful on very specific runs, but it just gets outclassed by so many other perks. You could argue that it's not the worst perk in the game, which I would probably agree with. There are some other worse perks than this one. Maybe we'll talk about that in the future as well. I mean, you do have like In Shining Armor in New Vegas, which is quite literally bugged and does nothing. So that one is worse just by default. I would also argue things like Here and Now are worse, that just level you up once, because that's not nearly as good as pretty much any other perk in the game. Although maybe tagged could argue with that depending on your intelligence level, or if you just wanted to max out a character quicker or something, you wanted to get them to max level faster. And I would also say it's better than something like a XP gaining perk, similar to like Swift Learner, where that just doesn't give you that much value out of it, where 10% is not really that beneficial. So I wouldn't say that this is the absolute worst perk, but it is probably within the bottom 10 perks, at least in Fallout 3 and Fallout New Vegas. Tell me your thoughts on tagged and whether you think that this perk is overhated or do you think it's a little bit underrated? Do you feel like it can be useful in certain builds? I would really like to hear that. Thank you guys so very much for watching this video. I really enjoyed making this. Tell me if you'd like to see this on some other perks too. I would like to go over some more of these. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye, everybody.